Good morning, TechBridge Nation. Welcome to this year's Entrepreneurship Institute Conference, the virtual Entrepreneurship Institute Conference. I'm Don Webster, the Executive Director of TechBridge, and we're thrilled to have you here today. So this early bird special gets the party started, and we have Dr. Chris Speicher from Marywood who's going to be offering opening remarks. Chris is a farmer, a professor, an entrepreneur, a grandfather, a skier, a world traveler, and maybe most importantly, a friend of TechBridge Nation. And so I'd ask you to read his bio. You often hear us say, why not us? Why not here? Why not now? Today, where do big ideas come from? My friend, Dr. Chris Speicher.
Thank you, Don. Hi, everybody. So I want to start off with a little story. Unfortunately, we're here in the former Scranton Central High School auditorium, and it was here that I made my Broadway debut. I got in a little bit of trouble in my senior year, and I was told that the only way I was going to get out of trouble was to be Mr. Bumble in the play Oliver. And on this stage, I made my Broadway debut, and I'm thrilled to be back here. I'm so sorry that all of you aren't here, but I'm glad that you're all attending. This is a fantastic event, and I hope today that you learn a few things. So in my journey as an entrepreneur and as a faculty member, I'm constantly faced with very complex ideas that students bring in. And those ideas, the way that the students tell me, particularly if a student has a science background or a background that's not technically in business, they have a very difficult time describing their problem and how they're going to solve it and what they plan to do in terms of creating a business. So today we're going to go through many of those ideas, and we're going to come up with a very, very simple approach that you'll see from the screen here with my friend Nemo. How Pixar does it, and how Pixar takes a very complicated story and breaks it down into a very simplistic story. So today we're going to discuss how to come up with ideas. This is a subject that I do entire classes on, an entire semester, 45 hours, and the students do about 100 to 200 hours worth of work. So trying to do it in this short period of time is really difficult. But coming up with ideas is a very, very challenging thing, but there are great ideas, and students in Northeast Pennsylvania, particularly through TechBridge, have been enormously successful creating wonderful ideas that have gone on to create sustainable businesses. We're also going to talk about what's going to change in the next 5 to 10 years, because in change, there are fantastic ideas. In change is where you're going to find your low-hanging fruit for you to go out and develop a wonderful idea and a business here in Northeast Pennsylvania. I'm going to talk to you about how to tell a very simple story, because stories can be really complicated, and we're going to go through an example, and if we have time in the end, if Don doesn't use the hook to pull me off stage, we're going to go through a simple storytelling process, and you're going to go through one of your own. We're also going to talk about knowing your audience. Who's in your audience? Who are you talking to? Because a lot of times you're going to be talking to people that don't have the level of sophistication about your idea and don't have the level of sophistication in terms of logo, in terms of the terminology that you're going to use. So it's essential for you to know who you're talking to. And so we're going to make a couple assumptions, and I'm going to talk about those assumptions. And then we're going to talk about what questions to ask, and continuously going back and forth and asking those questions till you really define your idea into something that you can turn into a business. And then lastly, we're going to do how does Pixar do it? And Pixar, for many of you, if you know the story of Nemo, we're going to talk about it a little later, takes these really complicated problems and turns them into very, very simplistic solutions. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to try to give you a way to tell a Pixar story on your own. So what do you do when you come up with your big idea? What's your big idea? It's going to be your idea. What makes you different? How do you become that different differentiator when you're going out to trying to create a business? So if you can differentiate yourself based upon low cost, When you come up with a product idea, can you differentiate yourself based on a niche? How are you going to make yourself different? What are the things that you're going to use is one of your most important considerations? Because if you're no different than your competitors, you're basically creating a model, and they're way ahead of you. So you have to create a way to segregate yourself from the pack and create something that's totally different from what's currently out there on the market. So my big question is, so where are we going to be in 5 to 10 years? Lots of things have changed. Oh, let me go back here. Lots of things have changed. We no longer have blockbuster video, right? Now we have streaming. Streaming is absolutely everywhere, everything that we want to do. In fact, the means in which we go and see movies or TV series has all changed. To you, it's commonplace. To most of us, going out to the video store, buying that video, coming home, inserting it in, seeing if it's any good, and watching the whole video because you just made that whole trip, that is all in the past. In the future, I have a picture of a young woman in the upper right-hand corner driving a car. Do you think that's going to change? How do you think that's going to change? Well, the reality is, in the future, we're probably going to have self-driving cars. And those self-driving cars are not going to allow young people to get behind a wheel. The insurance industry is not going to allow young people to get behind a wheel. I mean, it's going to be, with self-driving and with automation in the automobile industry, we're going to be in a situation where many of you won't be driving in the future. The insurance industry is not going to get in. You're going to get in, program in exactly where you want to go, and it's going to take you there. It's going to drop you off. And owning a car may be something in the past. Ride sharing, using the various services out there, may be the only way in which we interact with a car in the future. The bottom left-hand corner shows a warehousing situation. Now, we know in Northeast Pennsylvania, we have thousands of warehousing jobs. These jobs, I'm afraid, are at risk because in there you see people. And those people that are operating are subject to injury and other issues that happen, not showing up for work, not being able to get to work because of things like snow. So we're going to see automation in this. In fact, there's lots of automation in logistics, in particular in warehousing situations. And this is going to, I think, dominate over the next 5 to 10 years, where you're going to see very, very few people that are operating within a warehouse facility. In the bottom right-hand corner, you see the cockpit of an airplane. And today, automation in airplanes is being tested by large companies like UPS and Federal Express. When they fly their packages around the world, most of the time they're being flown by pilots. But they've just started to transition, particularly over the Pacific Ocean, where those planes are being flown by drones. Now, the pilots are still in the cockpit. The pilots are still there as of right now. But in the future, that's one of the most expensive variable expenses that airlines and package delivery companies face, and that's going to change dramatically. We're going to be seeing those airplanes take off and land completely autonomously, much like you do see with a drone nowadays. So if we're going to tell a simple story, there's many things that we have to do. The problem for simplifying stories is that you have to find out what people's problems are. You have to find out what's going to solve their problem. What are the things that are going to solve somebody's problem and give them a solution that they find viable. And the most important thing about solving a problem, of course, is getting people to take their wallets out of their pocket and to pay you. That's the biggest thing. When young entrepreneurs come in and we talk, I always say, well, who's going to buy this? Tell me who's going to buy your product. Because if you don't solve somebody's problem to a point where they're willing to pay for it, you really don't have a sustainable business idea. And then others can't do this because the barriers are very, very high. So you have to talk about why you can do this versus somebody else. Why the barriers for somebody else to entry, that you've created a way in which you've created barriers so that you can't go in. Or are there barriers that other people have built that you've figured out how to hurdle? You figured out how to get around. Maybe you figured out how to do a less expensive version of what's the current piece of it's in the marketplace. So I'm going to kind of speed along here just because We are really under time constraints. So I'm going to assume that you audience knows zero. They know nothing. They know absolutely nada. Because when young people come to me with ideas, they assume that I have all this knowledge. I don't. You know, your particular area that you're so excited about and you're going to present to me or to anybody else, whether it be somebody you're going to ask to assist you in developing your idea or ask for money to help you develop your idea, those people don't have that technical background that you're going to have on your product. So you have to break it down into the most simple components and be able to explain it in a way that everyone will be able to understand. So ask and answer the 7 deadly questions, the who's, the what's, the whys, which you're going to ask 5 times over. You're going to constantly ask why. Why would I buy this? Why does this product work? Why is this a better alternative? You have to ask these questions. You have to have these questions ready to go and constantly be asking and asking and asking. You're going to do, where are you going to do this? Now, we all, of course, want you to do it in Northeast Pennsylvania because we're going to help you, we're going to encourage you, we're going to do what we can to make your business successful here. And when are you going to do this? When is the timing good? I have students that come to me almost on a daily basis that have ideas that are next generation or 2 generations into the future. And those ideas are great, but will they work today? Is it something that we could start today, or is it something that we're going to start and it's going to really lag for a year or 2 until technology catches up to it? So you have to ask those important questions now. And then how? The how is the most important thing, because how are we going to do it? How are the pieces going to come together and make this into a real and prosperous business for you into the future? So these questions, which are our normal questions that we ask in almost any scenario, you have to ask and you have to really dig into when you're coming up with your big idea. And lastly, how much? This is probably the part that young entrepreneurs really don't understand completely, because the how much is so important. Whether that how much be, what's it going to cost for you to develop this idea? Or how much are people going to pay for this idea? Now, in many times, it's a guess, okay? You're going to take a stab. But you have to take that guess with some basis. You have to take that guess with some background and some knowledge. And you might not have that knowledge. That's why places like TechBridge are wonderful places where you can interact with entrepreneurs that are here to help you, and that we can assist you in trying to nail down that price, trying to nail down that how much it's going to cost in terms of production or technological development. So we can assist you with that, but that's one of the most important questions, because if you can't show sustainability in your idea, sustainability of your product, and the ability to do it in a cost-effective way and sell it at a price where you potentially make a profit, then you really don't have a great idea. So that's the types of things we try to work through way ahead of time. So let's talk about the Pixar story. So in Pixar, almost all stories start off with once upon a time, right? You know, whether it be we're going to talk about Harry Potter, whether it be we're going to talk about something with Disney. All those stories start off with once upon a time. And lastly, whether we're going to do Star Wars. Even the Star Wars movies start off with once upon a time. So Pixar took that idea and took that pitch into a very simplistic thing. They're going to say, once upon a time, there was. And you add your piece in. And then every day, there was. You describe the story. And then one day, you describe what happens on that one day. And then because of that, and then because of that, and then finally we conclude with until finally. So in the case of Nemo, which we have a very interesting little thing. So once upon a time, there was a widowed fish named Marlin who was extremely protective of his only son, Nemo. Every day, Marlin warned Nemo of the ocean's dangers and implored him not to swim far away. One day, in an act of defiance, Nemo ignored his father's warning and swam into the open water. Because of that, he was captured by a diver who ends up in a tank of a dentist in Sydney. And because of that, Marlin sets off on a journey to recover Nemo, enlisting the help of other sea creatures along the way. Until finally, Marlin and Nemo find each other, reunite, and learn to love and depend on each other's trust. So that is a simple story. How does a Pixar story relate to you being able to tell your story of your product or your service, your idea that you've developed? So let's look at something that's current. This is so current today, particularly on today, which is the day in which hopefully we're going to have a vaccine that's going to get started. There's a great magazine, and it's a magazine that breaks down very complicated scientific data into data that you and I can understand, hopefully. So it's called the Science Translational Medicine. It's a great medical magazine, but it doesn't really appeal to about 99% of us. Unless you have some sort of technical background, it's really difficult to read. So this is what they have to say on the prospects for a safe COVID-19 vaccine. It's very long. It's very complicated. I only took 2 passages out of about 58 pages in which they wrote in this month's journal, particularly as it relates to this vaccine. So as you can see, there's lots of detail, right? Lots of data. So the prospects of a safe COVID-19 vaccine, how are they going to happen? So what we want to do is we want to look at the whys and the hows and how they're going to explain it, which I think is a problem right now with a lot of the experts that we see on TV explaining the efficacy of new drugs, explaining how it's going to work so that I can understand it, right? So we need that detailed information, right? But a lot of times it probably is way over our heads, right? It's probably information that's way over our heads we're not going to understand. And it's probably way too much information, right? You know, we all know what way too much information is. And it's definitely information we all need to know, right? But what are the real questions? For me, it's, is it safe? Would you take it? Would you take it? Meaning an expert that is describing this to me, that knows the details. Would they take it? And will it end the pandemic, and will it end death? So that's the important factors that we're going to be facing today. But I would love to talk to all these people about doing a Pixar presentation on this. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes, and I want you to develop your own Pixar story about the pandemic. All right? So this is a little practice, because if you practice this 3 times, I promise you it will be part of everything that you do in the future. And you can use this for any story you're going to tell. So let's start off, and we're going to take a couple minutes before we move on to the next segment. So let's start off with once upon a time there was an evil pandemic that killed millions of people on Earth. Then every day, scientists worked extremely hard to develop potential cures for the COVID-19. One day, the scientists came across a cure that they thought would be effective. And because of that, they were able to develop a vaccine and a potential cure. And because of that, they were able to get that to the market and help people. Until finally, we have a vaccine that's coming to the market, hopefully today. So this is how you break down very complex ideas, and you put those ideas into terms that people can understand, terminology that we can relate to, that we can understand, because it's a very, very, very difficult thing when you take highly complex ideas that all of you are going to be working on, that all of you are going to be trying to develop your ideas, and there's going to be lots of technology and lots of different terms in there that, quite frankly, a lot of people don't understand. So you have to break those terms down. You have to be able to give us an understanding of exactly what you're trying to tell us. And more importantly, what you're trying to solve for us. The solution is the key to your description.
So Chris, let me jump in.
Okay.
There are a couple of questions out in the portal. We're going to actually sort of convert over and let them work on their Pixar while we bring up our next speaker. But would you do me a favor and go out into the portal after you step off stage and ask those questions?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to.
That'd be great. All right. So for TechBridge Nation, we stay on time. You guys know that. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually transition speakers here. We've never done this before, so hang in there. Go ahead and jump into the keynote speaker part of the agenda for Chris Hackett, and we'll be back in about 4 or 5 minutes. All right, we're getting started. Thanks for being here today.
Okay, so for the best Pixar story, I will offer anybody a $1,000 scholarship to Marywood University for the best Pixar story that I get presented to me by the end of today.
Chris Hackett, did you hear that? You're up next. What are you going to offer?
Thank you, everybody. It was great talking to you. I hope you all are super successful in your careers, and stay safe.